Like the new shirt? Let's get into it. Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Everyone loves Spider-Man like little girls love K-pop demon hunters. Also, there's Scotland in the background. There's Scotland! Nobody is hyped for Avengers Doomsday, and yet Spider-Man Brand New Day has done excellently well at the box office. Simply because people love Spider-Man. I mean, hey, it was fun enough for me to visit the Spider-Man set in Glasgow last year. As someone who's seen the set in Glasgow, it's honestly amazing how they've been able to transform Midtown Central Glasgow into the streets of Manhattan. It's the attention to detail was pretty impeccable. Like changing the signs, having the hot dog stand, adding in the grit and grime, having all the vehicles, as well as their elaborate tank and action sequence. It's pretty immense what they've been able to do. But of course, all that's going to mean nothing if the movie isn't good. And is the movie good? As a Spider-Man movie? It's great! But as an X-Men movie, not so much. In fact, as an X-Men movie, it's pretty bad. X-Men movie? But this is a Spider-Man movie, what are you talking about? There is an X-Men character that appears in a very prominent role in this movie, and it's said to be the MCU's worst kept secret. Also, there's a plane going over. Jean Grey is in this movie, and according to the utter backlash from X-Men fans, Jean Grey has been utterly butchered. Even for casual viewers, Jean Grey is not the best villain in the MCU lineup. In fact, Jean Grey is another entry into this weird tradition that Kevin Feige established ever since WandaVision, where certain villains get a mere slap on the wrist for doing abhorrent stuff and taking little to no accountability for it. That seems very narratively jarring, especially when you consider that Rocket Raccoon called this kind of thing out way back in Guardians of the Galaxy #1. The point of Rocket Raccoon's rant is that it doesn't matter what your sob story is, that does not excuse you from doing dumb, stupid, abhorrent stuff. Everyone's got a sob story, including Jean Grey, but that does not excuse her from violating people's minds, overtly intending to kill people, and then the characters around them say, oh, you're just special, you just need emotional validation. What, emotional validation after torturing so many others? Look, in the case of Spider-Man Brand New Day, I get that Peter Parker is practicing empathy, and Peter Parker is in the right to give people a second chance for redemption. That's admirable. In fact, that admirable trait of Peter Parker is one of the strongest aspects of this movie, which I'll elaborate more on later. But unless they do something about Jean Grey's character to make up for what she did in this movie, good grief, man, they've butchered her character. So yeah, Jean Grey was the weakest part of this movie, unfortunately. And honestly, everything else about this movie is, for lack of a better term, no, it's an intentional term. The rest of the movie is amazing. Pun entirely intended. The action scenes are great, the overall characterization between Peter and the majority of the characters are great, especially between Spider-Man and Punisher. Honestly, given the choice between The Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day in regards to summer blockbuster movies featuring Zendaya, Tom Holland, and John Bernthal all at once, I would much prefer Brand New Day. There have been critiques regarding Tom Holland's iteration of Spider-Man, but from what I understand, the majority of them have been addressed in this movie. Tom Holland's rendition of Spider-Man now feels more like a man, with Peter Parker taking on more responsibility, learning and growing through his trials and tribulations, and being a character you want to root for, you want to see improve, given the situation that he's found himself in. Having to deal with the consequences of wiping people's memories in the previous movie, as well as having to deal with the increasing arachnid implementations of his DNA, Peter Parker genuinely struggles here, and that makes his achievements all the more admirable. That's why people love Spider-Man. He's a hero you want to root for. Take note, Kevin Feige. There's a lot of great action scenes between Spider-Man and the members of the Hand, between him and the Hulk, and him and Scorpion.
Have I ever told you the definition of scorpions?
There's some great emotional scenes between Peter Parker trying to reconcile with his past girlfriend and his previous friend who've had their memories wiped of who Peter Parker is. And by far, the best aspect of this movie is the dynamic between Peter Parker and Punisher. And yes, this is the same Punisher portrayed by Jon Bernthal as we've seen in the Daredevil series and most recently, the Punisher One Last Kill. Now, people can find it a wee bit jarring that the Punisher is toned down for the sake of this far more family-friendly movie, which makes sense. Because from what I've heard in the comics, characters would change their characteristics a wee bit to suit the crossovers. Questionable decision, but hey-ho, comics. Not to mention, the Punisher originally debuted as a character in the Spider-Man comics back in the day, so it makes sense for him to play a prominent role here. And I believe the filmmakers are very much aware of this, because there's plenty of scenes where the Punisher is acting as if he's going to do the brutal stuff that he's doing in One Last Kill, but Spider-Man prevents him from doing it. It's kind of this interesting mixture where I guess everybody wins in regards to representation of the Punisher, in that he's toned down for the sake of this movie being more oriented towards families. At the same time, you can sense in his character he's meaning to do the gritty, rough, and at times terrible stuff, only to be intervened by Spider-Man. I think that's perfectly exemplified by when we first see him in that tank chase scene. Punisher's driving the truck, Punisher's driving his signature vehicle. Spider-Man notices and swings to him, and then Punisher's trying to aim at the tank, and he's like, "Move out of the way, kid!" Spider-Man's trying to talk him into it, only for Punisher to get in his way, only for Spider-Man to knock him out of the vehicle, and then the Punisher goes, "Motherfucker!" And he gets webbed in the mouth before he can pull off a swear. So, yeah, that's the kind of vibe that these two are going for from this point forwards. And of course, much like Punisher's clash with Daredevil, it's very intriguing to see Punisher idealistically clash with Peter Parker. But at the same time, Peter Parker's warm and genuine soul manages to win over Punisher's better side. Honestly, just seeing Peter Parker and Punisher clash and interact with each other throughout this movie was a brilliant highlight, to see how their personalities clash off each other, how they help each other in overt and unintentional ways at times, how the Punisher is willing to take on the Hulk, even though the Hulk is clearly more powerful than he is. Okay, there was one dumb moment where Peter Parker said, "I'll take on the Hulk, you take on Jean Grey." No, Punisher should not take on Jean Grey at this moment. What do you think's gonna happen? She's gonna take over his mind and make things more complicated. And what do you know? It happens. That was a dumb move. And again, I don't like how they've butchered Jean Grey's character, but I do like how this movie ends, so major spoiler alert. Peter Parker tries to enter the prison where Jean Grey is held captive, and she's gotten so powerful that she's created this giant area of effect where her telekinesis is making almost everyone stand still except for Peter Parker, because his radioactive spider DNA is preventing him from being taken over by Jean Grey, so that's why he's able to move about. The Punisher notices this and insists on doing it his way, so we get this ending where, if you're paying attention closely enough, even though the Punisher intended to kill Jean Grey, Peter Parker self-sacrificially saved Jean Grey from the bullet. When you reflect on the scene, I think the Punisher unintentionally helped out Peter Parker and Jean Grey grow, because if he didn't fire the bullet, Peter Parker wouldn't have had the moment of practicing self-sacrifice. Not to mention, even though we can argue back and forth about the Punisher's sense of morality, but one can make the argument that the Punisher's stance on killing off Jean Grey with a sniper round was a smart move on his end. But Peter Parker takes the bullet. Jean Grey notices the self-sacrifice and is seemingly on the journey of self-reflection, which will hopefully lead to a redemption arc in a future installment. Please, Marvel, please let Jean Grey become a better person. Please don't let her continue to be dismissed with a mere smack on the wrist for her doing overtly evil stuff in this movie. And then we see Punisher just do the Jon Bernthal thing of screaming out, "Wah!" And this time he's holding Peter Parker in his arms, kicking himself into the hospital. You can see that he really does care for Spider-Man despite everything. And we get more brilliant interactions between these two. I love the scene where the Punisher actually gets a bit teary-eyed with Peter Parker getting recovered, and then Punisher agrees to help Peter Parker get out of the crowd unnoticed, and then Punisher helps Peter Parker get through the crowd by pretending to be Spider-Man, and as we see the Punisher's perspective, he literally does the John Bernthal grunts as he's moving about like, you gotta love John Bernthal.
You making fun of me, kid? You making fun of me, kid? Yeah, that's right. I'm the best part of this movie.
A friend of mine recently told me he would do brilliantly for a heavy metal album. And fortunately enough, even though the after credit scene is very clearly meant to be an indication of what's to happen at Avengers Doomsday, given the fact that I am not excited for Avengers Doomsday in any way whatsoever, I am grateful that the after credit scene is presented as fairly vague. So, as far as I'm aware, I could just stop watching the utter desecration of the MCU until I need to watch season 3 of Daredevil Born Again. As for Avengers Doomsday, I don't think I'm gonna bother make a whole video about it, but I might as well say it here and now. I'm not excited for Avengers Doomsday. Even though Marvel has this whole, ooh, countdown clock, ooh, crossover between the Avengers and Fantastic Four and X-Men on screen for the first time in this series, ooh! I'm not excited. It's all superficial hype. It lacks the narrative substance that was built up so well in the first 3 phases, which made Infinity War and Endgame so exciting in the first place. And looking back now, Endgame had a few narrative weak points where we could really see where the franchise would begin to fall in phases 4 and 5. But Endgame still holds up as a pretty solid entry in the series. And it's just so unfortunate to see where the franchise went from since then. All these very poor narratives. Phases 4 and 5 had so many weak and mediocre narratives, filled to the brim with plot holes, and many moments that contradicted previous entries in the MCU. Need I even mention the forced woke politics that went into phases 4 and 5? And going back to Brand New Day, it seems to me that Marvel Studios, as they exist right now, might be getting the wrong lesson from this. They might say, ooh, people bought into Spider-Man Brand New Day. We haven't had a box office success this high for a long while. That must mean people are excited for Avengers Doomsday, right? Wrong. People just like Spider-Man. That's pretty much it. They like Spider-Man. And the way Sony has handled Spider-Man is far more consistent than what Kevin Feige has been doing with the MCU for phases 4 and 5. Honestly, I don't even think I'm going to see Doomsday in the cinema. I'm just going to watch Doom 3 instead. The only reason I would watch Doomsday is if a friend invited me. That's it. Anyway, as for Spider-Man Brand New Day, I rank it an 8.8 out of 12. As a Spider-Man movie, it is absolutely brilliant, featuring some of the best moments of Tom Holland's specific iteration of Spider-Man. But sadly, everything I mentioned about Jean Grey really hinders this movie from becoming what I'd call a masterpiece of superhero storytelling. But what did you think of Spider-Man Brand New Day? Let me know in the comments down below, and I look forward to further conversations regarding this movie. Do you like the new shirt? Maybe I'll just keep wearing this throughout future videos. Let me know in the comments down below likewise. Thank you all so much for watching. You can follow me on social media. I have Letterboxd, I have Instagram. I will intend to continue making future videos and live streams for this channel. So subscribe if you want to, and please share this channel with friends and family who you think would be interested in the kind of topics that I bring up in this channel. In the meantime, Scott Stinker signing out. The point of Rocket Raccoon's rat